Welcome everyone to today's professional development webinar, Humanizing the Online Environment, Increasing Instructor Presence, and Enhancing Student Engagement. This session is brought to you by ILCO, Illinois Community Colleges Online. I'm Jeff Newell and I'll be moderating this session. I would like to thank Heartland Community College for providing the web conferencing platform. Please note the caption is available. Captioning can be turned on and off using the control bar at the top of your screen. ILCO is pleased to welcome our presenter, Dr. Michelle Pacansky-Brock. She is a noted leader in higher education with expertise in online teaching, course design, and faculty development. Michelle's work helps online instructors understand how to craft relevant, humanized online learning experiences for college students. She is the author of Best Practices for Teaching with Emerging Technologies and has received national recognition for excellence in teaching and faculty development from the Online Learning Consortium. Currently, Dr. Pacansky-Brock is the faculty mentor for online teaching and learning with the California Community Colleges California Virtual Campus Online Education Initiative. She is leading a California Learning Lab grant project that is examining the impact of humanized online instruction on diverse students in undergraduate online STEM courses. You can learn more about her work at her website, brokansky.com, and follow her on Twitter using @Brokansky. And I'll put both of those in the chat. Q&A is turned on, and you can post questions to Michelle using the Q&A feature here. And the chat is open as well, and you can use that for other back channel communications. So with that, I say thank you, Michelle, for joining us today, and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, ILCO, for inviting me here today. I'm very honored to spend this hour with you about such an important topic. I would like to get us started by inviting you all to reflect back on the past, gosh, what is it now, more than 6 months? Since the start of COVID-19, and just kind of think about the journey that you've been on, the ups and the downs of it all. And as you reflect back on that time, recognize one person, identify one person who's done something to support you through this time. Think about one person who's done something to really support you through this. And when you identify that person in your mind, I'd like to invite you to share the name of that person in the chat, and you can do that however you wish. You can do a first name, you can do a full name, you can do initials. It's your choice. But please recognize that person by typing the person's name or initials in the chat. And let's just take a moment to recognize these names. And as we think about these wonderful humans that have supported us through the past several months, I want you to hold that feeling close to you during the presentation today, because this is a presentation that it's all about human connection. It's all about relationships. And if there's one thing that we see more clearly now going through the past 6 months, 7 months, and continuing with COVID, is that we really need each other. And there are non-traditional ways to connect and still support one another, even if we're not always sharing a physical space with the person. So thank you for sharing. Thank you very much. I'm going to move now and just share my screen, and we'll get started with some slides. And I'm also going to put the, oops, I almost just left the meeting. Hold on a second. I don't want to do that. That would have been fun. There we go. Okay, I'm going to put the link to my slides in the chat. So those are my slides. I just put it in the chat. If you learn better by kind of having the slides open on your screen, I invite you to open them up. If you feel like that's a distraction, then just feel free to stay focused on the slides that I'm sharing here today. But I want to point out that these slides are really designed to be a resource for you. So I encourage you to loop back to them later and click on some of the links that I have embedded in them so you can see more examples, and just kind of loop back to something that may be thought-provoking to you. I invite everybody to find one thing in this session that resonates with you. It might be helpful for you to take some notes, whether that be on paper or on your screen. But that's our goal for today, is for everybody to just take one, even if it's an idea, if it's a piece of research, if it's a teaching practice. That's what I want each of you to focus on doing here today. I'd like to start just by acknowledging that while I am a single person here sharing about humanizing, what it means to me is rooted in a very long trajectory in California that started more than 10 years ago in the California community college system. And it has spread. We've seen a lot of adoption of these ideas and a lot of advancement about what we mean by humanizing. At one time, we were just taking it to mean using some videos in our courses. And now we're going deeper with that and making some pretty compelling links to existing research. While the research isn't about online, it's about learning. And we're trying to make those connections to online courses and do some of our own research to demonstrate the impact of humanizing. So I'll share a little bit more about that too. Humanizing is very much about equity. Equity is important as we make changes in our teaching by keeping equity in mind. And what I mean by equity is it's important to recognize that equity is not the same as equality. Sometimes that still gets confused. Equality is treating everyone the same and thinking that that's fair and the right thing to do. Equity is about recognizing that everyone is different and some of our students need different things to achieve the same goals as other students. So equity is about ensuring every person has access to what they need to be successful. And because we're talking about equity, I think it's important for me to acknowledge my positionality. I want to be sure that I have a clear commitment about what I'm doing as an equity-minded educator. So I have written this about myself. I have committed to making a commitment to improving my knowledge about the cultures and lived experiences of people who are different from me. I continuously strive to see the privileges that I have been and continue to be afforded by the color of my skin, my cisgender, my heterosexuality, my able body. I intentionally connect with, make space for, and learn from my diverse colleagues. I continue to make changes in my teaching practices and share those teaching practices, those equity-minded teaching practices that work. So it's not just about my class. When I see something that's working, I really make an intentional commitment to share that, which requires me to remove my emotional armor and engage in conversations about race and ethnicity, even though that makes me feel uncomfortable. It's not something I was taught to do growing up as a white person in the United States. And recognize that I will make mistakes. And mistakes are good because they're evidence of one's effort to grow. So perfection is a very closed off world to live in, right? When we're flawless and perfect, it means that we're really not living fully. And this is kind of where I'm coming from as I dig into equity. The problem that humanizing seeks to improve is outlined on this slide. So higher education is a vehicle for social mobility in the United States. And for those of us committed to community colleges, we know that that's at the core of our mission, right? And we also know that diversity is key to innovation. Teams comprised of different people consist of different perspectives, and those different perspectives yield more creative and innovative ideas to sticky problems. We sure have plenty of those to deal with. In past decades, online courses have increased access to higher education for students who had traditionally been left out. And I'm referring to our Black or Latinx and our Indigenous students. But those same students, we know, are less likely to succeed in college courses across the board. So when I say equity gaps, that's what I'm referring to. But we know that these equity gaps are exacerbated by STEM disciplines. Their STEM disciplines are a microcosm for equity gaps. And women are also less likely to succeed in STEM disciplines. And these equity gaps are also exacerbated by online courses. So when a Black, Latinx, or Indigenous student makes the transition to an online course, their chances, the rates of success go down. And so that's the problem that we're digging into here. And I love this quote: "When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower." In higher education, we have a long-standing trajectory of pointing to students for being underprepared, for really being the problem. And so equity requires us to shift that perspective, that mindset, and make a commitment to looking internally at what we are doing and changing what we are doing to support the success of more students. And I want to be clear about where I'm coming from. I do not believe that online is the problem. I believe that lack of human connection is a barrier that exacerbates equity gaps in online courses. So when it comes to committing oneself to equity, we're looking for those barriers, and we want to tear them down. And so that's something that we are focusing on with humanizing. Okay, let's let me go. So what does that look, what does the student experience look like in some online classes? And I just got to have a really short clip here from a student who's reflecting on his experiences in an online course. And I'm going to ask you to just listen.
I can see that a professor isn't trying to interact with the course. And it's just little things like the automatic announcements that only show up at 12 a.m. on a Sunday. Like, it's all automated. They're just not, or you leave a question and ask the professor, and 3 weeks later you get a response. Like, that's when I start to judge, like, I just wish you wouldn't be here. Like, I wish you would focus your energy somewhere else, because I'm not learning anything. But yeah, so that's the only judgment, is when you're not doing anything. We don't care when you make mistakes, though.
So by listening to that student, you see the emotional connection to his learning. He feels as if there isn't an instructor invested in the course, yet he's expected to be invested in the course. And it's that gap that we need to close. And here's why this is so important, and I think also so hard, and not for everybody. Some of you are right here doing it already. I know that. I've connected with many of you, and but overall, generally in higher education, we really privilege cognition. And we think that cognition, the realm of thinking and understanding, just kind of, it's out there, and we need to tackle it, and students need to have, the grit to just kind of do it. But what we know from research about the human brain is that that's not the way it works. We are creatures that feel and sense all the time. And I think when we reflect back on COVID, this may be particularly clear. Our behaviors, our ability to learn something new is directly intertwined with how we're feeling. And I have a quote that I absolutely love here that I want to share with you. "Emotions are not just messy toddlers in a china shop running around breaking and obscuring delicate cognitive glassware. Instead, they are more like the shelves underlying the glassware. Without them, cognition has less support." And that is written by two neuroscientists, and the link to the article is down below, and it's from 2007. So when we hear about this groundbreaking knowledge about neuroscience, it is groundbreaking, but it's not really that new. And when we teach online, it's true that our students appear to us. They're more likely to simply be names on a screen when we're teaching because they're not in physical proximity with us. But that doesn't mean that we can't teach in a way to know who those students are. And knowing who our students are is more than just seeing them on camera. I do believe that the great increase in the use of synchronous tools like Zoom for online teaching and learning comes from a good place. It comes from an educator's desire to connect with their students. But a webcam does not equal connection. And what we don't know when we just see our students are all of their mindsets that they're carrying around, all their challenges. And we know with COVID, these challenges have just kind of exploded in terms of financial concerns and mental health issues. But it's these mindsets that are a barrier to so many students, particularly the students that are less likely to succeed in online courses. The research of Walton and Cohen identifies an idea called belonging uncertainty that really is important in this conversation. And it hinges on the idea that humans are social species. Belonging, seeing oneself as socially connected to a group, is a basic human need. And members of socially stigmatized groups experience belonging uncertainty. They're more likely to experience the sense of belonging uncertainty. And when there's something that kind of just triggers that belonging uncertainty, they're less likely to engage. They're more likely to step back and quit. And from the research of Walton and Cohen, they found that when white and Black students are exposed to the same threats of social connectedness, the motivation of Black students is impacted much more severely. So that lack of social connectedness is a trigger for belonging uncertainty. And that's why I believe we have these exacerbated equity gaps in our online courses. So online teaching is rooted in this concept that instructor to student relationships lie at the heart of humanized online courses. They serve as the connective tissue between students, engagement, and rigor. I want to be very clear about one thing. This is not about dumbing down a course. This is about ensuring that connection is fostered between an instructor and a student, and that connection is leveraged by an instructor to challenge and push a student beyond what they think they can do. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's about a different type of rigor. And one of the challenges that I see, one of the barriers that I see to getting this new, unique approach to online teaching to really be adopted wide scale, is that relationships start with psychological safety. And creating psychological safety requires us to take off our emotional armor and be vulnerable. It's very hard for college academic professors to go into a place of connection, to foster that, to step outside of the role of, subject matter expert and knowing everything. The principles of humanized online teaching are presence, awareness, and empathy. And what I mean by presence is the notion of, don't be a robot. And I have stories, they're anecdotal, but I have one particular story from about 10 years ago where a faculty member in one of my online faculty development courses shared that she sent an email to one of her online students, and that student wrote back and said, "Oh my gosh, I always thought my instructors were computers." And that just really sticks with me, because today, in this day and age, and when we look at the emerging research in higher education, we're seeing bots take on the role of teachers. So this is really important. Again, just because you're doing, automated announcements every Sunday at 12 a.m. doesn't mean that your students are going to recognize you as a human, as a person with feelings, as someone who cares about their learning. And that's actually what the research about online community college students shows, is that the one thing about an online course, looking at all different kinds of course design features, the one thing that is linked to higher course grades is when students feel like they have an instructor who cares about them on the other side, their grades are actually higher. And so that requires us to have an awareness of who's on the other side of the screen. You need to make efforts, intentional efforts, to get to know your students. And then empathy, which is hard, and empathy is very different than sympathy. Empathy is about stepping into the role of your students and trying to see things through their lens without judging them. A humanized online learning experience is designed and facilitated to intentionally send kindness cues that affirm students' social inclusion. So again, we're trying to flip that belonging uncertainty. And this article that I have noted at the bottom of the slide is actually looking at this problem within the context of STEM, but we're taking this notion of kindness cues that affirm student social inclusion, and we're building this into what we mean by humanizing. This slide you can unpack a little bit later. It was something that really resonated with me, but we hear a lot about the threats. We hear a lot about the macroaggressions and the microaggressions that cause this belonging uncertainty, but we don't hear a lot about the kindness cues. So the macro affirmation, obvious or blatant acts of social inclusion and community and respect for dignity for our students. Microaggression, whoops, that's wrong. That should be micro-affirmation. I have to fix that. Subtle or ambiguous acts of social inclusion in community and respect for dignity. So keep that in mind when I start showing you some examples. We're getting there. Right now, I'm about a year and just a few months into a 3-year grant project that is focusing on humanizing STEM, online undergraduate STEM courses in California public higher education. And I'm the lead PI on this group, and I'm working collaboratively with a group of online faculty developers and STEM instructors from 3 different institutions: Foothill De Anza Community College District, Modesto Junior College, and Humboldt State University. And we have a research team that is being led by UC Irvine, Diju over at UC Irvine. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about what we're doing. We're putting together a 6-week Humanizing STEM Academy that is rooted in this 10+ year trajectory of this kind of grassroots effort around online teaching. The Humanizing Online STEM Academy is a 6-week asynchronous online professional development program facilitated by a present, aware, and empathetic 3 facilitators actually, in Canvas. It culminates in the creation of a humanizing showcase and a redesigned course. And I have some links down here to the showcases from our pilot participants. We piloted this last spring, and you can dig into these later. You're going to see examples of some of the the humanizing elements that I'm going to talk about in just a little bit. So our participants went into this knowing that they were going to create this showcase and making a commitment to sharing their work, which is a big part of making change. So in the professional development, the Humanizing STEM Academy, the participants engage in learning about research. They see humanizing practices modeled for them, and they ultimately go through the course with the goal of developing 8 humanized online teaching elements that they roll into their course, they apply to their course. And they are the liquid syllabus, and you see the humanizing principle linked here, and whether or not this is about delivering content one way or if it's interactive 2-way content, and then a variety of tools. So it is about experimenting with different tools as well, and having a safe place for that experimentation, keeping that need to support, the vulnerability and the nerves that come along with all of this. Liquid syllabus, which I'll explain in a moment, humanized course card and homepage, a getting to know you survey, voice, video feedback, icebreaker, wisdom wall, bumper video, and a micro lecture. So I'm going to take you through these. And I do see a question. Let me just go back to this one. A question, would non-STEM instructors be able to participate in the academy? So right now, this grant is funded by, this project is funded by a grant that is specific to STEM. So at this point, it is specific to STEM. After the end of the academy, we have plans to roll it into California Community College state level professional development offerings. But we're also making plans to share it in the Canvas Commons, which means anyone can adopt it. It'll be shared with the Creative Commons attribution license, and that way it can be adopted and facilitated at any institution willing to take it on. So that's really exciting. Now, I showed those elements, and it's really important to understand that this is more than just about like having artifacts and putting them in your course. It is important to weave in human presence throughout a course, kind of through the course design process. But course design and teaching, just like cognition and emotions, are two sides of the same coin. So the warm demander pedagogy, which is rooted in research about culturally responsive teaching, is really kind of, it's the fuel, it's the engine behind humanizing. And being a warm demander is about fostering personal warmth in your course. There's an intentional focus at the start of the term on positive instructor to student and student to student relationships, so taking time for that. It's about active demanding as opposed to passive understanding. So it's about being intrusive, which is another word that is often used by Dr. Luke Wood and Frank Harris in the work about Black Minds Matter. And a warm demander pushes back on negative stereotypes that are likely to influence the mindsets of minoritized students. So it means that we need to be engaged and aware and actively making space for our own unconscious biases, and pushing back on these negative stereotypes that often influence instructors and the way that we actually interact with our students. And it also, warm demander also is about affirming effort and ability, not just noting, recognizing hard work, but also at the same time sending cues of self-efficacy. So, you're so smart, I believe in you, those kinds of words. You don't just say that and that alone, but that has to be included in the narrative with students. And many of these strategies, not all, but several of them are targeted to the beginning of a course, even before an online course begins. And this is the course that we look at as this high opportunity zone, where that belongingness uncertainty is most likely to occur. So coming into an online class, it's an isolating experience. And if we know that lack of human connection is a trigger for belongingness uncertainty, then it's really critical for us to be present and have a human presence in the space. So let's talk a little bit about how we do that. The first element that I'm going to introduce you to of humanizing is the liquid syllabus. And I have a 3-minute video that I'm going to play and just ask you to reflect on some of the changes some of the opportunities this might bring for reducing these equity gaps.
I know what you're thinking. I have a syllabus, and I've worked really hard on it. So why should I take the time to also create a liquid syllabus? And what does that mean anyway? After all, I already have my syllabus online in the form of a PDF, and I know all my students can access it in Canvas. But folks, the thing is, when your syllabus is behind a login screen, it may be tough for students to get to it from their phone. And no matter how lovely it looks on a computer, reading it on a mobile device is tough. The information in that syllabus is important, right? The bottom line is, when we use tools designed for print products, They don't result in mobile-friendly experiences, and that's not good for our students. How might things change if you used a website tool like Google Sites or WordPress to create a liquid version of your syllabus? For just a moment, imagine being a student. It's the start of your first semester in college, and the week before class starts, you check your email and you get a friendly welcome message from your sociology instructor. It includes a button at the bottom to check the syllabus. You tap that button with your finger, and instantly you go to a syllabus that's easy to read and experience with the swipe of your finger. And you also discover something pretty special at the top.
Hi Scholars, my name is Katie Whitman Conklin and I'm going to be your instructor this semester. A little bit about me, I lived in the Central Valley of California for a lot of years with my husband and children while he was stationed there with the Navy. And when he retired, we moved to northern Idaho, where we now live with our kids on a family ranch.
You think to yourself, hey, I'm going to love this class. I can't wait to get started. But you know what? That's not the only benefit of a liquid syllabus. Since it lives on the web, it's shareable with a simple link. That means you can place that link in as many other places as you'd like. How about adding it next to your course description in your college's class schedule, or on your profile page on your college website, or a link on your own professional website? And you know what can really help promote your course and encourage more students to enroll? That's right, share it on Twitter. When we design with web tools, we create mobile-friendly content that supports our students in so many ways. It also lets them know we care.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. A liquid syllabus, just to kind of go through some of what it is. It's created with a website tool. The one that we're encouraging faculty to try is Google Sites, but it could be made with any website tool. Google Sites is free. It does require a Google account. By no means is it the only way to do it, but it's easy to create a website with Google Sites, and it also does a really good job about supporting accessibility. It's important that it's a public website, so it can be simply accessed with a click on a phone. So we're thinking about tearing down barriers, right? So if you're a student and you get that great email from your instructor and say you don't even know what Canvas is, like what's this thing called Canvas, the learning management system, and so it says, say at the bottom, it says, oh, check out our syllabus, but the first thing you're greeted with is a login screen. We don't see that as a cue, a social affirmation cue. So we want to take that barrier down and be sure that by clicking, just tapping, it opens. And a website tool is going to create content that is mobile responsive. So it instantly adapts to the size of the screen that the user is viewing the content on. It's accessible. So we're using alt text, a sufficient color contrast, headings and subheadings, lists. The videos have accurate captions. And some of the components of it are that brief, imperfect welcome video. So it's important to be imperfect. It's not about standing, rigidly like a news reporter. And it's about being yourself. Pick up your phone and record a video of yourself in your natural environment. Being mindful that you make choices about what you want to share, right? You're the one who decides on what those boundaries are. Use supportive and hopeful language. So reconceiving of your syllabus. We're not the first ones to reconceive of the syllabus and think of it as an equitable teaching strategies. The Center for Urban Education, based in the University of Southern California, has been doing this for a long time. So it's about taking those principles of rewriting your syllabus in supportive, hopeful language, but putting it into this liquid type of format. We like to encourage faculty to develop a learning pact, and I'll give an example of that in just a second and demonstrate or explain why that's so important. And then use images, and if you're using images of people, be sure that the images of the people are actually representing the students that you serve. So what is a learning pact? A learning pact is, first of all, it sends the cue to students that you are a partner in their learning. It cues them that it's not just going to be up to them. And it's a list, it's a very clear list of things that your students can expect from you and what you will expect from your students. So you're starting here. Number one in this list, I will treat you with dignity and respect and be flexible to support your individual needs. I will provide you with a clear, organized course that is designed to ensure you meet our course outcomes in a meaningful manner. I will provide a variety of assignments to ensure your learning needs are met. I will be actively present in your learning. So I'm not going to read through this. This is shared in the public domain. You can take it, you can adapt it as you wish without attribution. But I want to point out one more thing is that the last item in each list extends a question to students and says, is there anything else you would like to add to this list? So it plants that seed, and then in the course, we have a discussion where students are invited to look at the pact again and either agree to it or add something to it. And then that's sending the cue to students that, your fingerprints are on this. You are part of this course right from the very beginning. So we have some examples of liquid syllabus. I'm going to open this one right here from Jeffrey White. And Jeffrey was one of our pilot participants in the Humanizing STEM Academy. This is his great video at the beginning here.
Hello everyone. Welcome to General Biology Online. I'm your instructor, Dr. Jeffrey White.
I'm not going to play his whole video, but this video was made with Adobe Spark, which is one of the tools that faculty experiment with in the course and come up with different ways of using Adobe Spark. He has his philosophy, his teaching and learning philosophy. He has his pact. He has a way to get questions answered. And there's a success kit for week 1. So really an emphasis on preparing students for that first week and some advice for success. So you can check more of these examples out on your own if you want to click through more of them. And at the bottom, in my role in the California Community Colleges, we recently had a Humanizing challenge, and we created a public Canvas course that walks you through how to create a liquid syllabus. If you want to give it a go yourself or share that with someone else, you're welcome to do that. So I want to just, one more point about the phone. We know that when we look at who is smartphone dependent in the United States, there is, race drives this. Race is a big driver of this. And so we're thinking about these phone-friendly learning environments as a component of an anti-racist course. And I just think that's really important to say, is that our white students are more likely to also have broadband access at home, but our Black and Hispanic students are more likely to be smartphone dependent. So the second component, or the second element, is a humanized course card and homepage. So thinking of just, this isn't revolutionary, but giving some mindful thought to what that course card is, being a symbol of your course sitting in a student's dashboard, and humanizing it with an inviting image. And this is a Sarah Williams. She recorded her humanized homepage on her phone because that's something that she's thinking about. But a humanized homepage.
I wanted to share my humanized homepage for Math 1A. In doing this redesign, I had a few goals. One goal is that the students know that I'm here to support their success and I believe in their success. And so I've included this brief 1-minute welcome video of myself in a casual setting. I just tell them a little bit about my point of view on the class and give them a couple tips for getting off to a strong start. Another goal of this page was that strong start. In addition to having a feeling of support and encouragement, I wanted them to have the information that they really need right here in front of their eyes the first thing they open the course. And so I've listed out the due dates that they need to be aware of for that first week so that they don't feel behind before they even start. And And then the other goal I had for this page is that the navigation be very simple, no question about what the students should do. So I've numbered these 3 steps, and the third step, Start Learning, is the only one that's a clickable button, and that takes the students straight into the first module of the course, which is an orientation module.
Okay, so that's the Humanized homepage. Again, really some kind of humanized presence, only the critical information that students need to know at that time, and then a link to get started here. And then one of the things that students do in the first week of the course is they complete a getting to know you survey. And we do have an example of one that has been shared in the Canvas Commons. You'll see information about that down below. And I also have one on my website. The link is down below in a Google Forms format. But asking students some information, for some information, and first of all, being clear to them that the survey, the results come straight to you, and it's information you are collecting. It's data that you are collecting about your students to be able to help support them effectively, and that you're going to keep that information confidential. That's important to share so they understand that going into the responding to the form. What are your preferred pronouns? I will leave you feedback in video format. Does that work for you? Sounds great. No thanks. I prefer written feedback. So one of the challenges with doing voice and video feedback is that the captioning isn't usually built in. And so asking this question up front allows you to identify the students who say, no, I don't want that. I prefer written feedback for whatever reason. And you make note of that. I'm going to talk about making note of that in just a second. In one word, describe how you're feeling about this class. This question here is going to allow you to see your students who are anxious, who are freaked out, and they'll say that. And then you're going to have lots of other students who say doing fine, okay, excited. But it helps you to understand who the students are at the start of your course who need your high touch connection the most. And please share one thing that may interfere with your success in this course. And I've had students who frequently, I hear that I'm pregnant and I'm going to have my baby in the middle of the term, and other aspects of students' lives and challenges that they're dealing with. So that data is then used to adapt your teaching during the course. And by adapting your teaching, you're sending the cues, I see you, I'm here to support you through this, throughout the course. Oops, I did not mean to click on that link. And there's a notes column in the Canvas gradebook that generally, I believe it's, unless your institution changes it, it's off by default. It's easy to turn it on by using the settings in the gradebook area. Those notes are only visible to you. So it's a great place to, for example, make notes of the students who prefer the written feedback, make notes about the challenges that students expect to be dealing with during the term. So when you're checking their progress and you're seeing if they are actively engaging in the course, you can start to understand what might be going on and reach out and send them a personalized message. I'm thinking about you. I see that you haven't turned this assignment in on time. What can I do to support you? Or you get the point. Those more personalized nudges are very valuable. Reach out before it's too late. And also part of adaptive teaching is where the element number 4 comes into play, which is recording voice and video feedback in the gradebook, particularly for those high opportunity students that you identify during the course. Use a self-affirming icebreaker, that's number 5. This one's called Beautiful Mistakes, and this one was provided, I think this is Brent Wedges. And so he's asking students, tell us about a time that shows how making mistakes helped you get better at something. By making space for this idea of learning as a growth process, having that growth mindset, building that into a course at the start. Again, that's about developing relationships. It's about helping students to see that they're not the only ones who feel a certain way, that all people make mistakes, and mistakes are couched in a positive, growth-oriented context. This is another great video by Fabiola Torres that I'm just going to play.
Back in 1990, when I was in high school, I loved to dance. Today, I still dance by myself in my house.
And then Fabi invites her students to share something that they're still doing before quarantine and after. So again, this is about a self-affirmation. It's about reaching into your own life and taking something that you're proud of and sharing it with your peers. And this is another one that I use in my history of photo class. Share a favorite photograph. I think this time I'm going to change, this semester I'm going to change it to share a photograph that makes you smile. Really trying to focus on the positive aspects of our lives and be the things that we have gratitude for. And then element 6 is this notion of a wisdom wall assignment. And I want to just kind of unpack this a little bit. A wisdom wall assignment is about giving students an opportunity to step into the role of an expert by reflecting on what they've done and sharing strategies with future students. So this wisdom wall right here is in VoiceThread, and if you click on it, it should open in a new window. Yes, and I'm not going to play it just for the sake of time here today, but you'll hear one of my students sharing her words of wisdom for future students. So in other words, an instructor gives the students a prompt. This prompt is, students, we're now at the end of our course. I want you to look back and think about how you were feeling at the start of the course, right? So this metacognition. Reflect on what you know now and what you wish you had known then, and share it with your future, or my future students. So they know going into it that their messages, their contributions will be shared with other students. That's baked into this. And it's amazing. And you learn so much about this, but this concept of the wisdom wall could also be used, for an exam, after an exam, for students to look back and share effective strategies, study practices, and then that could be shared in advance of an exam or a project with future students as well. And then bumper videos are taking the tools that faculty learn when they create their brief and perfect welcome videos and starting to apply them to instructional content. So, sorry folks, Google Slides likes to be a little glitchy on my side. I'm sorry for all the jumping around. I know that's really distracting. This video here by Brent Wedge is a course bumper video that he created with Adobe Spark.
A bit is like a small building block. If you have enough small building blocks, you can put them all together to build something really big. What exactly is a bit?
So when we think about our courses, what are those core concepts that are so important? Or what are those sticky topics that are so important that often trip students up? This is a great way to kind of target brief, this is less than 3 minutes, engaging videos set to music with images, and sprinkle those, embed those in your course in the particular place where students really need that extra scaffolding. I'm going to skip over this one and you're welcome to watch that later, but it's my rendition of the Humanized homepage, and it shows a different type of video on the homepage. I'm giving students tips about looking at the course calendar and the to-do list for students who might not know those exist. And this is I know, lovely capture of myself here, but this is another strategy, how I'm starting to employ these brief videos in different ways just by using my smartphone to help students be more effective with their learning and just to help break down the learning process for them.
I'm going to eat this whole watermelon. Sound like a bad idea? Well, it is if I do it all at once. But if I cut it up into chunks and eat a bowl every day, it's going to be gone in a week. And that's why watermelons are like the modules in our course. Your brain is a lot like your stomach. It works better when it processes things in smaller, frequent amounts.
So that's something that I plan to embed on my homepage, and change that homepage actually every module. So there's different messages that students receive. And then a micro lecture is, again, taking the same tools, but applying them to maybe, you know, kind of a bigger instructional piece of content. But we're trying to get faculty to think about micro lectures as under 10 minutes, which that's a big feat for a lot of people. So this is a video by Sarah Williams, who teaches math at Foothill College, and she used Microsoft OneNote and Zoom. I think she used a recording tool, but you could do it with Microsoft OneNote and Zoom or Screencast-O-Matic, any kind of screen recording tool. So in summary, humanized online teaching sends kindness cues of social affirmation from the first click. We're thinking about an online course as a student experience. We're focusing on cultivating trust and connection through human presence, being a partner in your students' learning, getting to know your students and identifying your high opportunity learners, make your students' experiences part of the learning environment and make their learning progress visible to them. Be a warm demander. Leverage your relationships to ensure all students develop their full intellectual capacity. I saw a comment in the Q&A area for something shorter or smaller to share with folks about humanizing. This is a link to an article that I co-authored. It was just published in June. It's an open access journal, so if you just click on PDF, you'll get the full thing. But it has these practices embedded in there, along with kind of a summary of the research that underpins humanizing. So that might be a helpful thing to share with folks. And that is the end of my presentation. We do have a little bit of time left, and I would love to see if anybody has questions. So I do see this one question here. Let's see, about accessibility, ADA compliance. And it says, at our institution, faculty have been dissuaded from using color or multi-column formatting on their syllabi for reasons of ADA compliance. I noticed that your syllabus examples use these features. Are these ADA compliant? I've run the liquid syllabus by the accessibility specialist that I have, and if we design the content using the heading structure and the subheadings and ensure that images have alt text and the videos are captioned, I have been told that it is accessible. Accessibility is something that can take on different cultures at different institutions. You know, and I've found that some institutions are reluctant about faculty doing certain things just because there isn't the confidence that that type of content is going to be created with accessibility in mind. But that's baked into our process that we share with faculty. So that's my response to that. If anyone else has anything that you want to share, I see it as even more accessible because it meets the needs of more students. I'm trying to read the second question. Sorry, it's kind of long. This may be a better question for later, but our tutoring departments manage SI sessions across STEM disciplines, which are now, oh, I think that was, I'm sorry, that was the question that I was thinking that the article would be useful for. So I hope that you got that, Sandra. The link to that article is on my last slide. Are there any other questions? We have about 6 minutes. I would like to, Anna, do folks have the ability to raise their hand? I don't know if
yes, they should be able to. Let me check. I don't know if we enabled that reaction feature or not. It doesn't look like it. They're just going to, and you do have a couple of other questions there that are popping up.
Okay, great. Let me take a look here. So Angie has asked, are you aware of any research around belonging and certainty in students of poverty and or students of trauma specifically? Not that comes to mind, no. I think that this is all, in my opinion, this is where the cutting edge research is happening right now. And I'm hopeful that it's definitely going to be something that comes out of COVID. So no, Angie, I don't have a good answer to that. Sorry. And then Kurt is asking, thank you so much for sharing this research and the practical examples you've shared. I originally came across your work as an instructional designer and appreciate how you encourage us to place attention on creating learning experience that engage the affective domain. I also wanted to share the work of Gordon Neufeld, author of Hold On to Your Kids, and Deborah McNamara, author of Rest, Play, Grow, as 2 additional resources emphasizing the importance of attachment. Thank you for sharing that, Kurt. I love getting new names to dig into. I'm going to write that down, Neufeld and McNamara. Thank you so much. Okay. Are there any other questions? I think I addressed them all.
Michelle, it does look like there's a question over in the chat about any research studies that measure the success of those practices.
Well, I'm so glad you asked that because I didn't do a very good job about talking about that component of the grant. So the grant, we designed the Humanizing STEM Academy that I talked about, right? And so we had a very small pilot group go through the Academy last spring, and now we've collected feedback from them, feedback from more subject matter experts, and we're also doing some navigation user tests on the Academy. And then we're going to take all of that feedback and make an improvement. And then this spring, we're going to start scaling it. So we have a plan to scale it out to 30, 3 groups of 30. So there'll be 90 individuals who will go through the Academy between 2021 and 2022. And there will be data collection that will be part of that. We're right now trying to figure out the research design of that. The pre and post kind of tests that we were planning to do is serving to be problematic because there's so many things changing with COVID. Most importantly, the students that we're serving, because it used to be students self-selecting online courses, and now that is completely changed. So we're really having to be mindful about how we do this research, and that's where we are now. So yes, we'll be looking at that. Let's see. Yeah, I think that what I just said should respond to Mateus's question. And do you have resources on developing one's speaking? Listening to my lectures, I seem to speak really fast and have vocal tics. That's a really good question. I think that the more you do it, the more you become self-aware, and when you become self-aware, then you start to make changes in your practice. But I also think it's going back to that element of imperfection. It's not about, you know, I think slowing down and speaking clearly is very important, but it's not about changing you as a human, you know? So there are certain things that you do that you shouldn't feel the need to change. But I just am a big believer that the more we speak on camera, the more natural it gets. It feels super weird looking at a webcam like I'm doing right now and knowing that I'm speaking to humans on the other end of it. But the more we do it, the more comfortable we get and the more self-aware we become about the things that we should work on improving. So Rehab, thank you for your interest in joining the Humanizing STEM Academy. Because of our grantee, we're we're only admitting participants from California public higher education, and who gets invited from California is going to be contingent upon the research criteria a bit and the number of institutions that we'll be collecting data from. So yeah, when we share it to the Canvas Commons, that'll be an opportunity for institutions to hopefully adopt it. And I really look forward to seeing that scale. I think we're about out of time. Thank you so much, everyone. I've really enjoyed spending this time with you, and I hope each of you have one idea or concept that you're taking away from this session that you'll share with others, that you'll implement in your course, that you'll give a try. That's my hope for you. Take care of yourselves, give yourself grace through these difficult times, and do the same for your students.
All right. Well, with that, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Michelle Pacansky-Brock, our presenter today. Many of you are already putting thank yous in the chat. Go ahead and do that. Let's show our appreciation for this hour that she spent with us here today. I hope that you found it beneficial and that it will give you some ideas of how to bring connections into your course. The recording of today's presentation will be available both at the ilco.net and ICCB faculty COVID resource page websites. It'll be just a few days. We'll get the recording done. We'll clean up the captioning and have that available for everyone in the system. And I will email registrants when it is ready, but you can be looking for that at either of those websites. So thank you all for taking time to be with us today. And again, I hope you found the presentation valuable. And again, thank you to Dr. Pacansky-Brock. That's it. We'll conclude. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you later.